So everyone look really professional because it's a professional podcast, and we're in three different time zones. So I'm in Sydney, Australia. Mathilde, where are you?
I am in New Zealand.
Beautiful, Brody, and you're in Portland.
You made
It's
you made it sound like it was bad.
and roll those credits. From Sydney, Australia, all the way to Portland, USA, two misfits hang out after class to riff on the B-sides of professional life. These are your professional misfits. All the way from Sydney, Australia, I'm your host, Christopher Sellers.
Portland, Oregon, I'm Brody Ipox.
And we're your professional misfits, where we riff on the B-sides of professional life. And for episode 17 in season 2, we're discussing work-life balance. And I brought a friend. I brought another French friend, Brody. So, bonjour Mathilde, ça va?
Ça va très bien.
Ça va, ça va, ça va. So, Mathilde, to give... Actually, here's the full story. So I know Mathilde from LinkedIn, officially Mathilde Bernard Fonderberg, which is perhaps the coolest name on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we got introduced when you built your little online village, as a matter of fact. I think Tony dragged me and is like, you got to meet this chick. And you were doing various things at the time, and then you've sort of morphed yourself into a spiritual business coach. And we even met when you came out to Oz. We had dinner, had coffee, we had dinner, all of that. When was that? I should know.
It was February of this year. It feels
February
like it
of
was
this
forever
year.
ago.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I remember when we went for coffee, and I rocked up, and I wasn't wearing the hat, and you're kind of like, "Who the fuck is this guy? And why is he waving at me from down the street?"
I saw him coming and I was like, I think it's him, but he doesn't wear a hat.
That's it. And it all worked out in the end. We went for cafe and eclairs, and we went down to the little bay, and then we talked about life in the universe. Anyway, so today's episode is work-life balance, misfits. And there's specifically a reason why I brought Mathilde in, is because Mathilde and her husband, Evan, are living the dream, literally. They're traveling the world. They're working remotely. They're doing what they want to do and pursuing all of the passions in life. And we were talking just off camera as well. It's not as clean and as pristine as everyone would think it is. Mm-hmm. And she was the ideal girl to bring in for this conversation, which is why, if you were listening previously, you'd know we tried to record this earlier when she was in Sri Lanka, but Sri Lanka didn't have any internet. She was working in a village with no internet, so we rescheduled.
I have video evidence that we sapped her entire village of internet.
We crashed.
Internet for a month.
That's it. We crashed the network. So we thought we'd reschedule. So we rescheduled to now. And so Mathilde, for people who don't know what a spiritual business coach is, can you give us a little background on how a French girl ended up in New York and married an American guy and then traveled the world, and just the nutshell version?
Well, it's very interesting said like that. When you hear your life, like just in just a few seconds, you're like, oh yeah, that's me. Okay,
that's true. Yeah.
How do I end up there? Well, it's very interesting, but visualization is kind of like what made me, just being in this kind of crazy life, because at an early age, I was visualizing without understanding that I was visualizing. I was just like seeing things that I wanted and really putting a lot of like, very strong wanting and motivation behind it. I'm also a very, fire type of person. So when I want something, I definitely fight
French?
for it.
No, surely not.
So it's I'm from New York. Well, I moved to New York when I was 23 and worked in an internship where I was not paid, so I would have to work on weekends, which actually was not legal. Sorry, U.S. immigration for listening to that. It's fine, right?
Yeah.
So that's what happened, and then I met my husband at the same time, and just things were just going smoothly, and then of course COVID happened, and at the same time it happened, which was a really shit show in in New York, it kind of made us realize like, oh, look at that. We can work from anywhere now. We can just go in South Carolina, which is where my husband is from, and spend like 3 months with a family and work distance and make money. And that kind of like shifted already what we were thinking of. We're already thinking of traveling and, but that really shifted it all. And we're like, okay, you know what? When this thing is over, when at least, things will reopen, maybe we need to actually think about a plan to get out and start traveling. But visualization was always at the heart of it. I started studying visualization really with a coach in 2020 when COVID happened. I started to do happiness classes, for coaching to understand happiness is actually a skill. It's not just something that happens to you. You actually have to produce some of it. You have to actually do some actions. And so I was kind of I was kind of understanding all this, not knowing I wanted to be a coach, not knowing I would be in the spiritual realm. Growing up into a family that was very spiritual. My dad has been doing astrology for 35, 40 years. Always been very connected with kind of the spiritual world and, using astrology, tarot cards, all of these were very natural for me, but never talking about it. Never talking about it because I was in the corporate world, right? I was an executive director at a French company in New York. You don't talk about those things, right? You keep this and you talk about it with people that wants to hear about it. That stops here.
Yeah.
But in the last few years, it's just been kind of like come and go. And a lot of the clients that I had online, because that's kind of started my business on the side of my corporate job back in 2021. I started to do project management and I started to help people to, just get money with their business, set up online, launching, helping them establish. And then the more I would do visualization, the more I would integrate it. Like I would tell people, do you visualize? Like, because people didn't have really clarity, right? They didn't have a vision. Like it was very hard for some people. They're like, I don't know what I want. I don't see, which is normal, right? It's the most human thing ever. And so it's telling them, well, have you tried visualization? Have you tried this? Have you tried this tool, right? It's not as woo-woo as we think. It's much more concrete, right? So I got going into it. And so starting since last year now, I really started to go into coaching with what I call spiritual tools, which, like I said, they're not that spiritual in the end. They're more concrete than we think. But that definitely kind of connects with your own, your own self and, kind of go a little bit deeper into understanding yourself and what you want. And that kind of led me to becoming a spiritual business coach and establish where I am now. So it's a little bit of a fast story.
That is, yeah, c'est parfait. And then, a couple of weeks ago, you were in Sri Lanka helping to build a village.
Musically, I guess. Not internet.
Yeah. They'll get there eventually. But yeah, there's definitely a focus on. I think you touched on it even, and we're going to get to this in the conversation, like post-COVID, and our perspective on work and life has to have drastically changed. And so I suppose this is what we'll get into in the course of this conversation. So since you're a co-host, look, you've got 5 kids, and so out of the 3 of us, like, you're the parent. So what's work-life balance look like for you? Because obviously you're not traveling the world every few weeks. So what's your definition, and how do you manage it? How do you calibrate it?
Yeah, I have. It's interesting because for me, I have a different perspective than I think, but framed the same as others. For me, it's balance, right? But a lot of the times there's an imbalance on the scale, and the true work-life balance is when you're in that deficit or surplus and you're still comfortable, right? And so for me, it's if I've got a lot of things going on with the kids, if life is coming at me fast, if work is busy, if I still know in that the systems and things that I put into place allow me some solace in my head, I got a moment to look at this, and I'm overwhelmed, and this is a lot, but I'm okay, That's the balance to me. And the thing about that is I think it's so subjective to the environment. Is everything nice and happy all the time? No. Is everything chaotic and frustrating all the time? No, it's not. And once you realize that, and you it's kind of it is what it is, to put it lamely. You develop that balance. So sometimes it may be work that I'm leaning towards. I've got to do this. This is going to set us up for our trip. This is going to be awesome. You guys are going to have more of me on my trip because of this. And so I'd say it's a weird position where I'm like, it's subjective, to the moment, not the individual, to the moment. And then, you just, the balance is the balance act, right? So like when you're in the moment of balancing it, again, if your head's clear, then I think that's the best balance you can have. It's balancing yourself before you worry about balancing the environment around you.
Mathilde, how does that sit with where you're at? Because you're more than once you've quit a job to go do the thing that you want to do. And for the misfits at home, I'm just going to out you a little bit here. I remember when we went to dinner in Bondi with your bro and a couple of friends and your husband, Evan. I remember saying at the time, the coolest thing I respect and adore about your in particular relationship is that you said, I want to do this thing and this is where I want to go and this is where my passion's at. And Evan had a full-time job at the time. He was an engineer. And eventually he's like, okay. And he quit. And he's come on this journey with you. And for anyone that's got a partner who is married or is in a committed relationship, that's no small thing. But then here's the couple doing the thing and living the dream. Let's say from the outside looking in, like living the dream. But then, Mathilde, if you don't mind, Mathilde, can you? We were talking a little bit before Brody came on, like what Evan's experience has been like trying to find his way, basically in this new sort of pursuit.
Yeah, you see, it's so interesting because as much as, we're definitely kind of like out and about and we're living a definitely very different life than the normal, I don't like to say normal, but normal society.
The 9 to 5, yeah.
The 9 to 5, right? So we still experience the same thing where we have to find balance. It's just a different type of balance, right? And just like you said, Brody, it's so true. It's like everything is always happy. Of course not. Even if we are in a beautiful country that we're exploring, even if we can hear the birds, even if we're near the ocean, all those beautiful things, we're not always happy. There's a morning you wake up and you feel frustrated that day, right? It's just happened, right? But like you said, it's also not always chaotic, right? Even if we're jet lagged and we have to fly, like 24 hours to go to another country. And, things just feel like sometimes like, oh my God, this is awful because I do have to work like 20 hours after this, whatever. But I think it's, and then, and for Evan, I'll talk about this a little bit after, but yeah, there's also, just accepting, to live something also differently when you've been in a full time. But which is very interesting is that, and actually it's kind of what I experienced myself, and I think a little bit for Evan too. It's like we are so much into this uncomfortable position all the time that you have no choice to become comfortable, right? So it's like we're throwing you out there, right? All right, you're gonna speak a different language. You won't have internet for a week, and it's like all those things. Like you're gonna fly for 24 hours, and maybe you're not gonna have a client this month because you don't have time to work as much as you wanted. All those very uncomfortable, little things, and at the same time you're able to balance by accepting that is just what it is, and that's you, like you said, like putting lamely. It's like, well, guys, we're not going to change the face of the earth right now, right? It's like we're just going to be there and we're just be present. And I think that's really the key word that has been for me, like, especially in the last few years, is like we're present, right? We're here. And right now, even if things are wrong or if there's something wrong, maybe the whole household is sick, whatever, it's like, this is okay because I'm here. I am alive. I breathe. I can still do really fun things, even if they're very little, because this is where I'm stuck right now. But I'm present. And I think the word of presence is really important when you have to think about balance, especially like that.
there's something. I'll jump in because there's something
Yeah, go ahead.
there's something in there that I want to drill down on just for a point of difference, because you're talking about being uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
And like the examples you can point to and that we can give is like, well, travel to a foreign world, go somewhere where you don't speak the language, like do something that really, pushes you outside of your comfort zone. And so for a lot of people that can, yes, that's a risk. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Like, what's the point? It's expensive, all of these sorts of things. That sort of discomfort is one type. However, and you make the point of, you can get comfortable in that, or you can adjust to that, right?
Yeah.
But the reason I bring it up is because how many folks go to work at the 9 to 5 in the job they hate, right? Or they know, like, you're all giggling, like they know it's slowly killing them. It's not taking me
Yeah.
where I want to go. I'm increasingly dissatisfied. So on that side of the coin, you're equally uncomfortable. There's an equal discomfort, but like a boiling frog, it'll just slowly kill you over time. And so if we're specifically talking about work-life balance, and you've identified that, look, there's discomfort on the happy, passionate side of pursuing things as well,
Yeah.
as much as there's discomfort in the,
It's not perfect in all
right,
rainbows.
like play it safe, pay the bills, get the more, pay off the mortgage, like pay off the whatever it happens to be. Like there's like how much of this work-life balance that we're talking about is about the choices and the challenges that you want to take on.
So this is so funny that you're talking about this, because this is one thing that I say often to people that are in this specific place where they're like, I want to change, but I don't know, and like kind of this transition. Because these are my people, right? These are the people that I coach. Is like,
I was going to
these are
say
the
this,
people
yeah,
that I push to take a leap, whatever the leap is. I'm not telling them to leave their job and travel the world if it's not what they want to do, right? But it could be like creating a business. It could be like doing something more meaningful with their life, whatever that means. Like that is just pushing them over the edge, this really uncomfortable edge that they don't feel happy about anymore. So the thing that I say often is like, there's two fears, okay? There's two main fears. And here in this particular case, this fear is also the uncomfortable, right? So the first one is, you are fearing that you could just do the same thing all your life and you're never go anywhere else, right? And you're just fearing and uncomfortable of just seeing that life in front of you and be like, holy shit, this is going to be my life for the next 10, 20, 30 years. And I'm going to feel like that all the time. Okay. And then you just like, okay, what do I want to do from that? Right? What do I want to do from that point of view? Okay. And then you have this fear. You have the fear of what your potential can be, right? This uncomfortable, like, what could I be? What could I become? What could I do, right? And like this fear of like actually like growing, right? Because this fear is really something that you are experiencing that often, is also coming into an imposter syndrome. It comes back in a lot of different symptoms, right? But it's like it's growing, it's pushing you out there. And so you're fearing, like you're fearing to go back to this first fear. So you're fearing, shit, like if I don't do this, I'm going to go back to this first fear. I'm going to go back to this awful life that I was in, right? But actually, this is the potential that I want. So I think like it's a choice. Like what type of fear, what type of uncomfortable you want to feel, right? You want to feel the one that makes you grow. You want to make you feel the one that keeps you stuck because you're too afraid of what could it be, right? Of what could be outside of this life. And I think it's very interesting when we think about that, because it's always a question of choice.
What?
In the end.
Well, Brody, I was going to ask you, because there sounds like there'd be a ton of parallels from what Mathilde is describing to where you're at right now. Because because Brody quit everything to do Misfits full time, Mathilde. So this is his version of traveling the world. Yeah, where? B?
Yeah, I just want to touch on something. You pointed out the two fears and the way that you framed them. The way that I see that is the same. And what people are afraid of is what they know and what they don't know. And what I know is that my life can look this way for the rest of my life very easily. All it takes is me choosing to do that, right? That's the one thing that's the component there. If I choose that this is it, this is it. That's what I know, right? And then the opposite side of that is if I'm going to go out and try to do something nobody's done before, I might not fucking know it all. I might be in the woods without a compass. And it's interesting that it's just the polar opposite of each other. And it seems that way too, thinking about that framework. Like it really, that is what the choice is, am I going to choose to be afraid of what I know and miserable about it? Or am I going to choose to be afraid of what could happen? And then I think that's what we're all talking about here.
Yeah.
That point right
Yeah.
there
100%.
is the uncomfortability. It's like, which decision do I make, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I really truly believe is not a lot of people are aware that they're at that point, right? They don't understand that they're being pinched by both sides of the coin. I know my life is this, and there might be something in that I don't like, that's making me uncomfortable, that I do want to change. But then right there, right, I identify it, or maybe even if I don't, what if I never figure out what this is? And I think the best question is how do you identify which fear you're battling at in that moment? Because then it becomes a lot easier to identify a solution.
Yep.
I'm uncomfortable with what I know. Okay, so now I have to figure out something I can change.
I remember.
I'm uncomfortable with I don't.
Yeah.
I need to look a little deeper. I need to learn.
I remember I wrote an article on LinkedIn about something I learned in acting college, and it's similar to this two fears things. Like, look, let's say you want to make a change in life, or even public speaking, or fuck whatever. People always talk about the fear of failure. That seems to be the banner child of personal development and creativity, especially the fear of failure, right? What if you fail? And I make the case, it's like, well, look, yeah, failing sucks, but you know what that feels like. You're gonna feel shitty for a while. You're gonna feel ashamed, embarrassed, humiliated. If I ask the girl out and she laughs at me, worst case scenario, I don't feel great. If I stand on stage and it just doesn't work, like I'm fucking humiliated. There's a lot to be learnt there, all that sort of, but it's a shitty, gross feeling, but you know what failure feels like. And that's why primarily, and because you're a sane, emotionally intelligent adult, you will avoid it if you can, right? That's completely sane. However, the other fear is the fear of success. Because if you ask the girl out and she says, where? She says yes. If you stand on stage and there's rapturous applause, if you make the pitch and they give you the money, then what happens? And on that side over that edge of the cliff, you've got no fucking idea, right? And that's what's terrifying. So that terror of the unknown is generally greater than, because you know what failure feels. It's a really shitty psychological hack, because you know what it feels like, and I prefer that. Or rather than taking the step. Now the difference,
the devil
I guess,
or the devil you don't,
bro, and the difference is because I guess the three of us are all misfits and we're wired a little bit differently. Mathilde and Evan will go, let's go to Sri Lanka. I don't speak, actually, what do? Thank you. Yeah, I didn't even know what they spoke. I know in India there's about 12 different languages you can speak, but and Brody's like, fuck, I'm going to quit everything, go all in on a podcast that we're building. And me, same thing. If I'm a misfit, I know every time, like, oh, should I say that? Should I go there? Should I do this? When I get that little flare up of like, should I? The answer for me is, well, now I gotta. Because I get that little warning flag of like, bro, spicy. Do you think you should? I'm like, I have to now. Because growth is on the other side of this thing. Now, it's not to say that I do reckless, stupid shit, but it's just, are you really going to challenge this assumption? Are you really going to say that? Are you really going to call them out? Yeah, I think I have to. In the nicest possible way. Now that we've established that and we've solved all the problems for all the misfits at home, why? Okay, we're 25 minutes. We've solved everything for everyone.
Great.
Right, which is pretty good, Mathilde. Like, normally we talk about everything and solve nothing. So, we're
I'm here to solve, guys.
we're mixing it up. One of the questions I've got here for today's episode is why has work-life balance become such a hot topic? Like, it's a little bit cliche to talk about, and I'm wondering, like, if it's talked about a lot, I'm also going to assume that it's a challenge for a lot of people. So, Brody, I'll start with you, and then Mathilde, I'll come back to your expertise. But like, why do you think so many like average Joe and Janes struggle with this thing? As opposed to what we idealize 20, 30 years ago. Or is it a myth? Has it always been like this, except now we've just got a label for it? Because in the age of social media, we fucking love labels for all the symptoms, for all the feelings, for all the conditions, for all the... Like, imposter syndrome is a big one. I know, Mathilde, you mentioned that, and like, there's no such thing. It's called insecurity. You can work through it. You'll feel it, even as an actor, before going on stage, 5 minutes before, you're like, the fuck am I doing? And then you have a process and you have skills, you get over it, and then you do the job. So the corporate label, and it's specifically a corporate label because anyone outside of corporate will say, fucking grow up. It's not a syndrome. It doesn't require medical assistance. You don't need a specific coach for it. Like, okay, but I'll curb my rant. But like, Brody, why do you is it a thing? Why do people struggle with it? What's your take?
Yeah, it's like I said. I think as human beings, it's really easy to get caught up in what's happening around us and the stimulation of life, right? And one of my biggest things lately for myself has been just asking why, like really, truly, just as simple as why, right? Why am I feeling this way? Why do I view things this way? Why is this happening even, and you can fundamentally normally break things down to a key point. And I really truly think if we're gonna say it's real, if we're gonna say work-life balance is real, it's something attainable and you can shoot for, I think the reason that people have so many difficulties is asking themselves why. Why do I need this balance? What is this balance to me? Where does it sit on my scale with my personal preferences and all of these different things? Because again, work isn't always going to be perfect, and that balance isn't going to be exactly the way that you think it is, right? Even when it's tipping in one direction that you want it to. Like Mathilde said so well, it's like I might be in a fucking foreign country, traveling, doing beautiful shit, but guess what? I might also wake up one day and be fucking sick of it. I might want to go home. I might feel irritated. I might feel frustrated, and then you ask yourself why, and you can probably figure out in that moment why you're frustrated, and then focus on the fact that you are in that beautiful country and you are doing those things. I think people,
and you know what? It's normally something really petty. It's like normally something really, really trivial and really petty. And I just woke up and then someone said the wrong thing to me, and it's like, oh, fuck you, and it's just like tilted the whole day.
I know, but look, and again, if you can catch yourself in those moments, even in the heat of it, when like someone walks in and you give them the fucking sour face just because you can, you're like, wait, why did I do that? You catch yourself and you're like, wow, okay, that was silly as fuck. Like I'm probably not gonna do that again. I've identified for myself what that shit is. And I don't want to generalize it to awareness, because it seems rude. You know what I mean? It seems rude just to say that the average person isn't aware. That's not what I mean. I think really, again, it's this overstimulation that we face, and especially in today's society where labels are so present, that's a fucking distraction in and of itself. The label is a fucking distraction from the why, and it's just this silly thing that people have bought into. But I'm gonna lean towards that it's a fucking myth. It's a fucking myth. And I'm gonna circle back too to something you said earlier. Happiness is a skill, right? It's not a destination, which a lot of people are assuming. And then they're not there, and then they start asking why. And then they start questioning when there's some emotional deficiency, or maybe even having to look at the void for a second where there's just nothing.
I'm foreshadowing. Yeah. But
it's again, why am I standing here now? Why am I in this podcast? And it's so simple, so cliche, kind of gets messy if you keep it to that. But at the same point, like, I think it's just the problem that people have, that they're not willing to ask themselves the critical question. And maybe that's the uncomfortability, part of the uncomfortability we were talking about too, is like, I don't, even if I do know, sometimes I think a lot of people don't want to face the shit, right? I know I don't like my 9 to 5, but I know that working in the opposition means I have to learn, because I don't know what it looks like not to work my 9 to 5. I have to work still, because again, I don't know what that looks like. So
that's where I want to jump in for you, Mathilde, because COVID comes along, flips the table on everyone. So your point, Brody, about like the job is this, the job is that, and then COVID said, "Fuck you, fuck all of you," and like most,
yeah, you think you know shit, right?
Right, but then like most crises in life, where you're not given a choice and you're forced to change. That's normally where like self-reflection really comes in, and so. I was going to ask you, Mathilde, especially because the clients that you'd work with, like post-COVID, has there been a definite shift in how we view work-life balance? And I've got like a little note here. Like, it's always confused me why it's work-life balance and not life-work balance. Like, why does this fucking career thing come first? And there's more to life than that, surely. But like, what's been your take?
So first of all, let's talk about actually that label, because when I remember this, growing up in France, you're growing up very differently than you would grow up in other countries, of course, right? We have our own culture, especially about work, where work is, even if, kind of have a tendency to change wherever you live in France, but, and if you, do big corporate job, of course, but most of it, like, people do not care about work the way Americans care about work, right? And the first thing I remember learning, I was in business school at that time, and we're doing, so it's like an international marketing behavior, right? We're trying to understand the different behavior in different countries, and which I thought was extremely interesting. And it was really one of the best class we had. And so the first thing that we told us, it was, I think, in the first session, is like, well, you have to understand that when you're going to market your product, you're not talking to the same person, right? It makes sense, right? You're talking to an American versus talking to a French person. They're not going to understand the same idea, especially if it's about food, if it's about work, like, we have such very different spectrum, right? And so the first thing it said is like, French people, they work to live, right? So they get to work, they get money to go on vacation and to have a good life. Okay, this is all about lifestyle. French people are like that. France is like that. Period. Right? People can maybe say, "Oh, maybe Mathilde's a stereotype." Not that much, really. I mean, I lived and worked in France. Yeah, exactly. In the United States, you live to work, and it's 100% true. Because when I talk to people in the United States, people I met, as a French person coming into the country, right, as an expat, right, the first thing people would talk is about their work, right, is about how much they're making, about how much they have on their 401k. is it? And I'm not here, like, I'm almost American, right? Like, I'm going to be citizen, like, next year, whatever.
Well,
So I'm not even...
You have these conversations with your husband, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. I have this conversation with so many, like, I'm married to an American and I'm married into an American family. And these are conversations that we have. And some of them realize it a little bit, but they're like, yeah, but this is how the system works. We don't really have a choice. I'm like, we don't really have a choice. And I'm like, That always triggers me because I'm like, do you really? I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to tell you people that don't have a choice. Let me bring you to Sri Lanka. Let me bring you to some other countries I travel to that actually don't have a choice of the quality of water they can drink, of they can shower with. Like, I'm going to give you a choice. Like, like, and then you talk to these people and they're like, yeah, but like, it's tough. Of course, people will always tell you it's more complicated than it looks, and I don't doubt that in their head and how things can be. Sometimes it is more complicated than it looks. I'm not here to judge, right? I'm not here to judge, but I'm also trying to open people's minds. Like, yeah, but what if, right? What if? Like, do you ask yourself this? What if? And I think this is so important. And I think
people ask it all the time, but they're normally saying, "What if this fails?"
Yeah, exactly. Well, because we always want to see the best, like the worst case scenario, not the best case scenario. It's always like that. That's also why I keep telling people do visualization, because you have to, your brain is working because you're making it work, right? So if you're the one making your brain work in a way you want it, guess what? Things in life is going to happen the way you want it. Isn't it amazing? So this is the first take that I want to talk about. And you see, one thing that also, like, I love to give these examples to people because it always make them react. It's like, I have people that told me a few times, oh, the life you're living, traveling the world and working distance. This is great. It works for you, right?
I was going to say that. I was going to say that before. Like, it's either we can't do this because you don't have a choice, or it's dismissed as, oh, but you can do that.
Okay,
like,
you can do that.
Like, that's okay for you, Mathilde, because you're French and you ooh la la, like, fly around and you're a crazy French girl.
You don't
and
have kids.
Exactly.
You don't have kids.
And Brody, you can do the podcast because you're just this misfit bro and you got tattoos and all this sort of shit and rah rah. And Chris, you're the creative fucking misfit, so of course you're gonna do all these things. Like, it's like, but I see it pisses me off, and I don't know if it pisses you off, Mathilde. Like, peut-être, perhaps, on peut, but fuck, because, like, do you know how much work goes into this? You pricks, like, and you just dismiss it as like, oh, but you can. It's like, you don't see the sacrifice, you don't see all this, the comfort, like, that you sit in, that we give up in order to do something else. Like, that's number one. Like, some are comfortable in their, oh, but it's too hard. Okay, great. Then earn the 9 to 5, get the 401k, be comfortable, have your salary at the end of every month. C'est la vie.
And no problem. I mean, whatever. If that works for someone, that's why I said I'm not here to judge. And I always tell people I'm not here to judge. But you can't say after that, it's because I don't have a choice, right? If the person actually chose to have a 9 to 5 and have a corporate job because they like it, like, I have a friend that always told me this, like, I love the security, like, I love that. But next to it, he's a writer, right? And he writes books, and probably one day he will be published. I'm happy for him, right? Because he actually made that choice, right?
Yeah.
And he's happy to take a month of vacation and do something else, like, no problem. He made that choice, right? But the people are not making choices and say, well, it's more complicated and it works for you and it doesn't have to work for me. And that's where I always give the example of, well, it's interesting because the main argument that we use against me is like, you don't have kids. That's why you can do that. Right. And I'm like, oh, okay. So what should I tell to the people that I meet while they travel, where they're 3, 4, 5, 6 kids in a van across the United States for 2 years? Should I tell them that probably they're also not doing it? Like, what is going on there? I don't really understand. Like, it's like, it's amazing because people will always think there is a reason for not doing it. And I keep telling, I know people that left France with their 3 kids, expats, found a job in New York, moved in there, lived there for 3 years, went back to France, go to India, like, they did it, right? yeah, they had kids, and people are like, yeah, but maybe their situation. No, they just found jobs. They just did it.
Yeah.
That's all. I mean, I'm like, and it's they didn't do special studies or anything. It's just like they wanted to travel their kid. They found a freaking way. Like, sorry guys, it happens. If it's not your thing, good, right? But at least you made that choice. You're not pretending that other
Yeah.
people can and you can't. And that is really a big difference. And I think for me, the life, this, work-life balance we're talking about, it's really coming from something like that. Because in the end, it's like, it is your choice. It is your choice to decide, how much I'm going to accept that my work is going to take from me. And when I say work, it's going to be a business. I mean, I know people that has worse, type of, balance, with their own business, right? They give everything into it. They burn out as much as they would burn out in a corporate job, right? Because it's all in here. It's all in here. It's not what you're going to accept. Like, I know people that did it in job where I'm like, you should just work 40 hours for that. Not even more, right? But there's so much in their mentality. They just want to produce, maximize all the time so much more that they get lost, right? It's a choice.
B, you look like you've got something to say.
Yeah, I'm just really connecting to your little voice earlier, and like that's kind of mine. Is like when someone's like, "Oh, you can't do this," because my fucking brain for some reason is like, "Well, fucking watch," like it. Cut my arm off and tell me I can't pitch a ball. I'll figure it the fuck out. I'll figure it out. I don't care. It's something about me, inside of me, and I wonder if that's. And it's strange too, because we keep talking about being comfortable as you're in that uncomfortability. It's like, what is that though? Like, that's just comfort. Like, I find comfort in that feeling, right? Like, that's what that is. It's not necessarily that I'm getting good at being uncomfortable. It's like that's comfort to me. That is comfort, and I wonder again if it's just that people. Mathilde, you said this earlier too. I also wonder if it's people just aren't willing to face the challenge. I'm just not going to throw myself out there, right? Like you guys said, I'm just going to go to Singapore, and a country I don't speak the language, and I'm going to stay here, and whatever it is. People just don't make that decision, and I wonder what stops them. Because, like I'm saying, for me, my little voice is like, fucking do it, bro. Like, if they say you can't do it, go do it. Like that's when you do it. And same for, like you said, Chris. Like So, what is that voice for the opposite side? And like,
I'll jump in because I mentioned on an episode previously that I actually built my work around life. Because at the time I was like writing and producing all of my own stuff. And so an income or a wage would have to fit around that. Now that's backwards to what Mathilde's friend was doing, and most people do, But the reason why, and this sort of answers your question, B, is like I think you've got to have a goal worth pursuing that's outside of the work, or if it left of center of what it is that you really want to do, right? Because there's no point jumping off a cliff if you don't know where you're going or what you want. That is just a bit right. That is just a bit silly and a bit reckless, and arguably, arguably that's what outsiders would see of Mathilde, right? And definitely of Evan. It's like, what do you mean you quit your job to go travel the world with a French girl? And right? And what do you mean? What do you mean you're leaving an engineer position because you want to explore voiceover? The fuck? Because that's what he's pursuing at the moment. And I've met the dude. He's got an amazing fucking voice. Absolutely, like this really deep, rich Southern American. Like, fuck yeah, man! Like you
should be your next. You should be your next guest.
Well, yeah, probably, and lovely guy. But it's to suddenly like sell all this shit and then go, I'm going to move to Indonesia. Okay, have your eat, pray, love moment. Now what? Right? So there's stuff you see in the movies where it's a life-changing experience and you're pushed to go in some direction. All for that. I've done that. That's cool. But as let's say professional misfits rather than just misfits, like what's the active choice or what's the active goal that you're pursuing?
Yeah.
We all sit here and talked about choices and like being aware of the choices that you make in terms of balance. That's what's critical. So if Brody, if you're going to give up all the other contracts to commit to this thing, why are you doing it? He's got an answer. Mathilde, if you're going to travel the world and do this like work stay thing for, you know, about a year, why are you doing it? You've got an answer, right?
Oh yeah.
Good point.
And so for all of you misfits at home, if you're considering work-life balance, if you're unsatisfied with where you are at the moment, if you're sort of caught between these two fears and frustrated, then okay, what's the direction you would want to go in? Start like walk down that little laneway, you know, and then start to make choices that take you further down that laneway on your own terms. Like it's not the all or nothing gamble, right?
No.
And for each of us, I'm telling you, for each of us, it started out by walking down that little laneway. Now, what you see now is the giant like leap off the cliff where you've sort of committed everything. It's like, yeah, but I'm a long way from the main street, folks.
Yeah.
And I'm not walking back the way I came.
I love.
Do you think?
And you know, that's. I mean, you're selling my coaching program right now. Great.
Perfect.
Because it's exactly what I tell people. It's and I created kind of a mini course about it where it's like, you know, kind of identifying the 3 mistakes that people do when they get stuck, you know, where they are. And the main thing is, like I always tell people, is like, first step you have to start is a vision. And that's why I always talk about visualization. I'm boring people with it until they try and they're like, oh shit, you were right. Like I have a friend that told me this on message. It was hilarious. I said, like, did you do visualization? And she's like, all right, I'm gonna do it. 2 weeks later, she leaves a message. She's like, you're fucking right, and I hate it. She's like, she's so mad. But she loved it because instant moment. A week later, moment of clarity. Everything became so much more clear. And I'm like, yeah, it's just, yes, you have to be consistent. Yes, you have to do the work. Oh, no kidding. This is how life happens, right?
Right.
So it's like, but it's like amazing because I'm like, this is an awesome tool. Like, this is an awesome tool. You basically, your work have to be being in meditation and visualize what you want in your life and dream. Oh, I'm sorry, it must be tough. You prefer watch Netflix? Okay, help yourself, right? But it's like, but it's so true. And so the client that I work with, they are, you know, the people we're talking about, right? They are at this age. And to kind of like jump in on the question that I did not answer, that because I'm sorry, I don't answer question about COVID, is like, it's exactly what happened. When COVID happened, people started to get stuck. Like literally physically get stuck. They were already stuck, by the way.
Oh, wait.
I was part of it. A lot of people were stuck, right?
It just sort of ripped this Band-Aid off. Yeah.
Right? Now they're not just stuck there. They're stuck, right? And then they're like, oh, whoa, shit. Like now we actually put a pause button on like my routine that was pretty well oiled and I was just following, you know, the track.
Yep.
And now I'm being totally out of this lane and I'm trying to figure out what's happening. So for some people, it could be just changing jobs. For some people, it could be just take some time off. No problem, right? But they were forced to make a choice. They were forced to change something. And the moment that happened, interestingly, people start to understand like, oh, I've been doing this same thing every day for 15 years. And right now, I just realized that I actually had more choices because we actually forced me to take a choice.
I'm allowed to do something else, you know, and once you get a taste of that, and once you get a taste of that autonomy, it can, for some, it can be kind of addictive. And for others, they're like, oh, actually, not for me. And that's, and that's okay. And that is
okay because you're making the choice once again. And that's what I keep telling people because I'm the one ranting all about corporate. I'm always ranting about society conditioning. Like I hate all of these, right? I don't like it, right? But at the same time, I respect people that make the choice to have a corporate job and enjoying it. And even if they don't enjoy it, but they made that decision because they want to go through it. I respect that. What I don't respect is people that stay stuck in there and will tell you, I don't have a choice, more complicated than you see.
Yeah.
This is all about you, because it's all excuses, and I do not like excuses.
Yep,
So
that's my asking why.
yeah,
If you can't, and Chris, I'm gonna be honest. The fact that you pointed that out earlier, that like I have a vision on what I'm trying to do, that it was weird because I didn't have a vision on that, right? Like I didn't have peripheral on the fact that I had it, and that other
Right.
people, and it's strange. It's very strange because it's so right. Like that really is what it is. And I would say to the misfits at home, like really truly, like Chris said, it's just identify, like look, like have the conversation with yourself, and
yes.
then take the steps that you need to move down that path, to move that needle in that direction. And it just takes a conversation with yourself. I swear, that sounds so crazy and ridiculous, right? Really,
It's not.
have a conversation with yourself, just yourself, not what mom thinks you should do, not what
Yes,
friends think you
exactly.
should do.
So that was
No.
this is
Yeah.
going to be my last. This is going to be my last question, just before we wrap this up, is because we haven't managed to touch on it here, but it obviously it's a thing. How much of our individual, work life trajectory do you think is influenced by the expectations of others? So not just family, peers, partners. Like, come on, like if I was a guy and I met Mathilde as she was working executive rah in NYC, and then she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna quit to do this thing." I'm like, "But I'm dating the French girl who's the exec." Like, what do you mean you're gonna quit? And like, what does that mean for like us and our lifestyle? And I like New York and shit. So how much of our like work-life balance is conditioned and affected by the expectations of those around us?
Oh, I think a ton more than we think. I think a ton
yes.
more than we think.
Oh, I mean,
For everyone on Spotify, everyone's viscerally going through trauma at the moment.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I'm gonna tell you, the first reason people don't go through something is because they are following the "I should do this" that are expected by someone else.
Well, and how many of us like chose our first job or chose what we were going to study based on, well,
Yeah.
this is what this is what's safe for what my folks think I should do because
Yep.
blah 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 blah.
And I'm going to be honest. I don't think it's all negative at this point, right? Like when you
That's
are
fair. That is
starting,
fair.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you are growing in your culture, you are growing in your family, you are growing with your own. I think sometime, especially at an age where you haven't had this conversation with yourself, especially at this age where you haven't had the chance to really explore yourself, following a path that we put you on, it's not that bad. What I think is really important is to be able to have a critical thinking and being able to judge if that path was actually correct for them, and not necessarily staying in the comfort of it because you want to, oh, I have to make them proud. I have to make them proud. Because here it's different. You're not choosing, you see a little bit the difference. It's subtle, but it's like you're choosing something because right now, frankly, you don't have any ideas, right? So you're like, you know what? I'm going to give it a go. This person tells me, right? Let me try this. But then you have the critical thinking behind it to assess, hey, this person was right. Actually, that's pretty good for me. I really enjoyed it, right? Or no, this is really, really wrong. Like I really do not fit in there. I need to get out. But there's people that stay in that lane and they don't say they get out. They're like, yeah, but mom said so, or dad said so, or dad do this, so I'm gonna do that, right? And so you stay stuck in it when you actually could make the choice of getting, especially when you're like early 20s, like you have so many opportunities and chances, and it's like you can do a lot of different things. But
I'd
I
reason
think you're right.
they don't diminish.
Expectation.
Yeah, and I'd reason they don't diminish over time as well. It's funny, like you get to 30s and 40s, and then I'm sure you get clients go like, oh, but I'm too old. Oh, but I have these responsibilities. And I'm kind of like, well, well, fuck that. You've got more experience, finance, opportunity, and connections than you did when you were 22.
Yep.
So again, you can make an excuse or you can make a choice. And the excuse is the choice. So
Yes,
B,
yes.
you get to wrap up the episode.
I feel like for me, you just said it. Like let's wrap up there. I like that. You can make an excuse or you can make a choice. Like truly, honest to God, Misfits. That's what it is. You can make an excuse or you can make a choice. And just like Chris just said, the excuse is a choice. You're making that choice.
Exactly.
You have to realize that. And if you are uncomfortable, if it feels shitty, if it feels bad, make the choice to get out of it. Make the choice to figure out something new, something different, something that's changed, you know? It's within your power. You don't have to believe everybody else when they say you can't do it. You don't have to. You just don't.
And Mathilde is the embodification of this for you, Misfits. Mademoiselle, merci pour votre temps today. You're in New Zealand for how long? And then when are you back in Australia to visit me?
So for a month, I'm in New Zealand, and then I go to Tasmania, which is still Australia.
Yes. You can visit my bro. Actually, funny fact that you mentioned that, because my bro's in Launceston and it's literally his birthday today, day of recording. So
no way.
Yeah.
And I'm going to Launceston. This is where I'm going.
It's Lonnie. It's Lonnie to the locals, and Hobart is town. It's fucking hilarious.
I'm gonna be in a farm for 3 weeks, you know, so it's gonna be a very interesting
Are you picking apples?
No, I'm gonna build a chicken coop.
Yes.
There you go, Misfits. She's living the dream, traveling the world, building chicken coops in Tasmania. That's what it takes. Parfait. Give my best to Evan. Brody, we're at episode 17. Do you know what's coming up next?
Stop it. Come on.
Take a drink every time Brody doesn't know what's coming. Okay, this one's unfair because we did shuffle things around, but episode 18 is actually going to be the Misfits voted episode. So guys at home, you know how it works. We've already put all the options up on social media. You've probably voted by now. So we'll pick whichever one is the most popular and we'll riff on that next week. Mathilde, if people want to find you on LinkedIn, on socials, wherever else, where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn would be the best place. You can find me at Mathilde Bernard van der Berg, as you can see on my name. There's not a lot of them.
I'll get those links and we can put that in the episode. So we'll have all of that taken care of.
Mathilde B Fun. So really B just the letter B, and you can find me there.
Or find me or find Brody, and you'll definitely find Mathilde because we're always riffing and talking to each other. As for us, you know how it works, Misfits. You can listen for free and you can watch us build. You can find us at promisfitspodcast.com. You can find Professional Misfits on all the platforms. Support us on Patreon. Brody needs new glasses. I need more coffee. That'd be cool. If you like this video on YouTube, give us a subscribe and like and all that sort of stuff. Shout out to all our fans on Spotify. Spotify is blowing up at the moment. Fun fact, Mathilde, we've got like over 50% of our demographic are females. So we're not as misogynistic as everyone thinks we are. or maybe we are, and they just come to hate on it. I don't know. I don't know. Well, it's a mystery. On that note, again, Mathilde, merci beaucoup. I've been Chris.
I've been Brody.
And you stay... Merci, you stay classy, Misfits, and aujourd'hui we'll see you on the next one. Merci.